Did this extinct human species commit homicide? Wants to know Michael Shermer of Scientific American. No. I know it's getting boring. The rule of, if there's a question in the headline, the answer is probably no, regardless of what the article says. But here we go again. To back up a bit, I talked about this last year, the astonishing discovery of a possible new species of human found in a deep cave in South Africa and discovered by a team of awesome, young, spelunking female researchers. And I mentioned at the time that the lead researchers attracted a bit of criticism from old cranky gatekeepers who complained about their use of social media and hiring younger researchers instead of older, more established researchers, and also for publishing in a peer-reviewed open access journal that allowed the public faster access to all of the data. I guess we can add Shermer to the list of cranky, perturbed gatekeepers since he used his platform at Scientific American to look down his nose at the researchers' use of open access, wondering why they didn't choose to publish in a respectable journal like Science. That is, at this point, a pretty ridiculously outdated mode of thinking when it comes to open access journals. They are no more or less respectable by definition than any other kind of journal. That said, even if it were true, it would be an argument from authority. Publishing something in an untrustworthy journal is a red flag, but it's not a reason in and of itself to dismiss research. Besides that, the journal we're talking about, eLife, is quite respectable, funded by organizations like the Wellcome Trust and the Howard Hughes Medical Center. See, I can do argument from authority too. In fact, one of the nice things about open access is that anybody can go online right now and view the paper in its entirety, and you can see the data that clearly goes 100% against Shermer's hypothesis that the bones ended up in the cave due to homicidal violence. As John Hawkes, one of the lead researchers, points out in his rebuttal to Shermer, the paper already stipulates that they found no evidence of green fractures, which would be fractures that occurred at or around the time of death. There are no bite marks, no tool marks on the bones, which would also indicate a violent end. There's no intentional breaking of the cranial bones. They simply have zero evidence to suggest that violence was at play in the deaths of these individuals. He mentions that maybe one day in the future they will find evidence of that, but as of right now, it's completely ridiculous to jump to that sort of conclusion. To make matters worse, Shermer responded to Hawkes' response on Twitter, stating that his article was, and I quote, less about H. Naledi and more about human nature and our violent past that is often downplayed, which really makes one wonder why he even bothered to talk about H. Naledi constantly throughout his very short article, saying, for instance, that these researchers are downplaying an all too common cause of death in our ancestors, homicide in the form of war, murder, or sacrifice. He states emphatically that further examination of the Homo naledi fossils should consider violence as a plausible cause of death and deposition in the cave. All of that seems awful specific to Homo naledi. But Hawkes very graciously, I think, takes Shermer at his word and responds, so Homo naledi was a way to get attention for your pre-existing views about human nature? Not very skeptical sounding. Indeed, a good skeptic looks at the evidence and then goes where it leads. And in this case, there is zero evidence suggesting anything about violence, but a lot of evidence suggesting something about bias in science journalism.